This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Hey, I'm running out to drop off a stack of letters and packages. Need anything shipped while I'm gone?
Save the gas. Stamps.com lets you print postage and schedule pickups right from your desk. Sync your contacts into the address book, get detailed accounting insights, and get notified the moment your certified mail is delivered.
All from my desk?
All from your desk.
Join the 4 million businesses using Stamps.com right now with code PODCAST and get your free welcome gift. Stamps.com, code PODCAST. Taxes and fees apply.
A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 76.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. And today's episode, staying power. And we're not talking about the erectile kind, right, John?
We're not? Damn, that's what I was prepared for.
Unfortunately, this is about persistence.
This is not about the little blue pill. No, it just is. It's not about that type of staying power. I don't think we don't need to talk about that. Not an issue. But what we need to talk about today is really persistence and how that's important to creating positive change in your life. Life, when you're trying to change your life has a tendency to throw challenges to you, and persistence can help see you through to the very end. But as I was preparing for our discussion today, Tom, I was thinking about how much of an art form persistence is. If another word for persistence is stubbornness, and sometimes it's good to call it quits. In fact, I can think about some times in my life where it was a very good thing that I was not persistent. Like, for instance, when I was engaged to be married to the wrong woman. Most people would have just followed through and gotten married and maybe had kids and ended up, in prison or divorced or in the grave.
Or on 2020 on a special.
Yeah. The thought of that just chills me, actually. It takes the breath right out of me, thinking about how close I came to making one of the most terrible decisions in my life.
Well, it kind of goes along with that saying, John, about, not working hard, but working smart, because you can put a lot of effort into something, but if your effort is going into the wrong direction and you're constantly on that train trying to keep it on the tracks, but that's not the path that is working for you, sometimes you have to pivot and change.
Yeah. So, persistence really is, it's an art form. It's something you need to give thought to. And, it's neither you or I can really tell people what to do with their lives. And that's not what the Swift Kick in the Ass show is about. It's about giving you the power to make your own decisions and take control. And persistence, really, the root of persistence is control. And what is within your control? If you're struggling and you're fighting and you're giving it all you've got, I think thinking about what you can control and what you can't control are an important aspect of that discussion that you, not to sound crazy, but you need to have that with yourself. As well as, persistence doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity. persistence means to keep trying, but if one thing doesn't work, then you need to shift gears and try something else that, and keep going. Even if you're failing, at least you've learned that something doesn't work. I think it was, Edison. I think it was Edison that said something like to the effect that, it took him 10,000 times of failing before he realized what it would take to make the light bulb. He learned what didn't work before he learned what did work, and that I think is what persistence is about.
Absolutely. You hear a lot about overnight successes, and sometimes that happens, but usually what the case is someone that's an overnight success has been working maybe 10 years behind the scenes trying to do whatever it is that they do. And eventually they get noticed, or it takes off, or they find what works.
Yeah, it's funny, Tom. I have to chuckle a little bit at what you just said, because I was talking to my sister about that same thing, and I said, overnight success takes years, and and if you really hear what that, if you actually listen to yourself saying, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But it absolutely is true in that it takes years of trying and years of dealing with failure before you can really be called an overnight success. When something finally starts to work and you are successful, they often don't include all the years and trials and tribulations that led you to that point. So yeah, it is overnight success. It seems like overnight success, but there was a lot of work and effort that went into it beforehand that somehow gets left out of that story.
Yeah, one of the rules we live by, John, is fall down, stand up, repeat. And I think that falls in line with persistence, because if you're trying to change something about yourself, you're going to fall down. You're going to mess up. I've been trying to eat better lately, and I've been trying to eat very low carb. And every once in a while, come up, we had our church fair, which had, a bunch of, high carb foods. So I partake, I indulged a little bit, but I don't just say, oh, that's it, man. I'm done. My diet's over, and I just go all out, because that's what I've done in the past. I just pick up, I start again, and I say, all right, well, the next day I'm gonna try to eat low carb, and I keep on doing that, and occasionally I fail, but that's okay, because I think the more wins kind of outnumber the losses, and eventually it starts happening for you and becomes a habit, and then that's when you don't have to think about it. And then if you indulge, it's no big deal, because your body is so used to that rhythm that it doesn't matter. You'll drop fat and whatever you want to do. And the same goes for any kind of goal you're trying to attain.
Yeah, it's very easy to quit, but if perseverance teaches you one thing, it teaches you how to kind of dust yourself off after you've been thrown off of that horse, and giving you the courage to get back on that horse that threw you off to begin with and caused you all that pain. It's important to do that. And I think if we're going to talk about persistence, then we need to also recognize that success comes in all different shapes and sizes, and why you're persisting, why you're struggling, why you're fighting, knowing that is very important to your ultimate success. Why are you doing this? Like, why did I call off a marriage? That was a difficult decision, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought, this is not something I want to live with for the rest of my life. And I'm glad I decided to kind of change course, because it put me on a path that allowed me to meet my wife, and we've been happily married for a long time now. So, it's sometimes it's okay to quit, but you also need to recognize why you're in it to win it. And sometimes I think we can just get this mindset that winning is all, the most important thing, but we lose sight of why we're doing it. We're trying to prove a point, maybe, or we're doing it just to prove a point, which is that really a good reason to struggle and to win, to prove somebody wrong?
And it's like, if say that you want to change your life, or you hate your job. We talk a lot about careers and so forth, and you want something different, or you want something for the future. Rather than just dreaming about it, if you're there working at it all the time, just a little bit, doesn't have to be a lot, but every night, maybe just, research and then start figuring out what steps you would need to take to attain whatever goal it is that you want to do. Say you want to change your career and you want to become, certified in some specialty. Well, what does it take? You start learning about, how to acquire what's prerequisites are necessary to take courses or whatever to change, so you can get that certification that you need that puts you on a different level or could put you on a different path. And just by doing that, even if you haven't signed up for the course yet or whatever it might be, you become something in your mind shows that you're working towards something, and you're like under construction. And once you're under construction, that's okay, because you start getting a feeling that I'm working towards something. And even though I'm unhappy in my current situation, there's a way out, and it gives you hope. And that's what we try to instill here at the Swift Kicking Ass, is try to give people hope so they can make changes that will be meaningful to them, so they can, attain what it is that they want to attain in their life.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying, Tommy, that taking those small steps towards a goal and knowing that you're eventually going to reach that goal it does give you hope. And I think that for those of us who have gone to college, it's very easy to understand that when you're in college, there's a certain structure in place. There are certain small goals that you must meet in order to achieve that degree. You have to take a certain number of classes. You need to take specific classes. In school, that's all laid out for you. But we know in life, none of that is really spelled out for you. There is no particular structure. There is no one clear pathway to get you from A to B. In fact, we know that there are countless ways to get to A to B. And in college and in school, what you're really doing, what they're really teaching you, is they're teaching you how to learn and how to compartmentalize those goals into smaller, more achievable parts. So like you said, Tom, if your aim is to get some certain type of certification, you can start doing research. You can figure out what steps you need to take exactly to get there. But going back to like my financial experience and how I, pulled myself out of debt, that too was also done in steps. First recognizing what I was up against, putting it down on paper, listing the creditors that I had, listing the people that I owed money to, knowing exactly where I stood. So then I could start planning to use what I had, my regular paycheck, and determining where I was going to start putting my money, where I was going to exert my influence and my control to eventually get me to a point to where I was debt free. And it took me a lot longer than I expected it to be. But what I learned along the way has changed my life forever.
Well, John, I know you're a big advocate of writing things down and making a list and putting it on paper. And I think that's important if you're trying to be persistent and make a goal. I know we refer a lot to about eating and working out, but the reason why we do that is because it's a great foundation that teaches you how to make change. So when I work out, I have an app. All right, there's a little app, and I put my workouts in it, so I know when I do back and bicep set day. I click the app, and I don't just go in there and do a Hail Mary and do it. I follow what I did last time, and I try to add 1 or 2 reps. And what that does is it creates a chart that I can follow in a roadmap. And the days that I feel, off my game, it kind of gives me a goal to aspire to. And the same thing is if you want to change, if we were talking about attaining a course, write down the steps of what it takes to achieve going to that course, or what, if you have to save up money in order to pay for it, or if you have to work out, nights to have a babysitter so you can attend the course, make it happen ahead of time and then work your plan.
Yeah. What's interesting too is that change occurs so slowly that oftentimes we things have changed and we don't even recognize it. It doesn't pop up on our radar that things have changed. But when you write things down, and like the app that you just used, Tommy, I can remember back in the days of pen and paper, going into the gym and writing down the weight, writing down how many reps you've done, what the weight was, and so forth. When you create a written record of that, then you have something you can go back to. And I remember time and time again whereas I would look at that chart and think, damn, in 6 months' time, I've really improved. I went from this weight to this weight, and you can see that progress, and it becomes very, very tangible. Whereas if you're just doing it and you're not documenting it, it's easy to fool yourself in thinking that nothing has changed at all, when and the reality is that you have changed, you have made progress. It's just that it was so slow and occurred over a period of time that you're not thinking about it.
Well, it's a good meter. It acts as a gauge or indicator to tell you if it's working too. Because sometimes I've looked back at my weight logs and it's been like, man, I haven't gotten any stronger in this exercise. I'm doing something wrong. That's when I was talking about pivoting. You have to think, okay, well, now what do I have to do in order to achieve the next level? Do I have to do a different exercise? Do I need to drop weight, or do I need to add weight? And, I know it sounds very simple, but this works for everything, John, everything in your life, whether it's, like you did, you got out of $90,000 in debt because you made a plan and you find out, am I saving enough? Am I cutting cost in the right area? And what I have to do to achieve my goal.
Yeah, that's true. I was 90,000 in 2.5 years.
Wow.
In the past 10 years, which I just made my final payment, we paid off over 230 grand.
Wow. Did you guys rob a bank?
No, that was working, just regular working. That was cutting expenses. And, I agree with what you're saying, is that these examples that we use can serve as a model for other areas of your life. And I agree too that oftentimes it boils down to something very simple. If you're looking to change your financial situation, it's very simple. It's how much you make, your income, how much money you have coming in, minus your expenses, how much you have going out, and that is equal to something that's plus or minus. And when my wife and I first started 10 years ago, dude, we were spending about 4 times more each month than we had coming in. And I couldn't understand before that why we could never get ahead and why we could never make a dent and why we kept on kind of digging ourselves a deeper hole. Well, it was because we were spending about 4 times more than I had bringing in. Mathematically, it was impossible for us to change and to get better. And it wasn't until I wrote that down and really looked at the situation that I realized that. I mean, it really is important to put that pen to paper and write these things down, because sometimes it's the only way it's going to click for you.
What the hell were you guys doing? Were you doing drugs or something?
Dude, you know what? No, what's funny is that we didn't live in an extravagant lifestyle, but we were a young family. We were putting money into our house. We were buying things for the kids. Of course, it was just, Evie at that time. And so we had one kid, and we'd go see, friends and family. We weren't going to Hawaii or going to Europe or anything like that, but we did buy a house. We were making improvements to the house, and it was simply just not paying attention to the money that we're spending.
No, I know, because I've been there myself, John. When I know one trip to the home improvement store can run you a lot of money without even, even if you walk in and you just want to buy something simple, you're going to spend $20 at least. And usually it's a lot more than that.
For
and
us,
same thing.
It was an average of $100 every time that we went. If we went and spent $50 at Home Depot or Lowe's, it was $150 the next time we went.
Yeah, I know.
They knew me by name.
And then Christmas rolls around, and you have to have all the decorations for your house. You want some, fresh grass when summer comes along, so you might buy some sod. And of course, to keep that grass in shape, you got to cut by a lawnmower and a gas can, or hire someone to do it.
Well, you touch upon something that's really key too, and that's there's a difference between want and need. And oftentimes we say we need this or we need that. That's not true at all. We want this or we want that. You don't really need it. But we had it in our head that, yes, we needed this or we needed that. And it, just plain and simple, not paying attention to the money that we're spending got us into a lot of trouble. There's a great article in Psychology Today, and it's entitled "How Do High Achievers Really Think?" And I think that it applies to persistence. So I'll just paraphrase what it said, and it said, "Achievement motivated individuals have a strong desire to accomplish something important and gain gratification from success in demanding tasks. Consequently, they are willing to expend intense effort over a long time span in pursuit of their goals." And I think that's really key. Motivation to lose weight or to save money. Motivation is going to wax and wane. The church carnival is going to come up when you're in a diet, and you're going to want to have that elephant ear. You're going to want to have that deep fried chocolate covered Twinkie.
Man, you're really taking it extreme. I just wanted a pork sandwich.
But those challenges are going to get thrown at us, and we're not always going to have the willpower to say no. And it's okay to say no, to say yes to that if you're reasonable about it. Not making that that pork sandwich day in and day out. It's okay to get off track if you don't go off so far off track that there's no getting back on it.
And that's where a lot of people fail, and I know that's where I've failed in the past, is you do that. Oh, well, I've already succumbed to it. So now, let's go cruise through McDonald's and, get a Big Mac and some fries, and it builds upon each other. And before you know it, you're completely off course, and that's just a memory of what you were trying to accomplish. But if you keep the persistence, eventually you'll reach your goal. It might take longer than you thought, but that's okay because you're working towards it.
Yeah, and the second part from the article from Psychology Today is really key too, because there are going to be times when we defeat ourselves and take ourselves off course. And what it said, failure avoiding individuals are more focused on protecting themselves from the embarrassment and sense of incompetence that can accompany failing at a valued task. Consequently, they're less likely to attempt achievement-oriented tasks and may give up quickly if success is not readily forthcoming. Where total avoidance of the task is not possible, failure-avoiding individuals may procrastinate, give less than their best effort, or engage in other self-handicapping behavior that provides a face-saving excuse in the event of failure. An example, drinking heavily the night before the morning of an important exam.
Yeah.
It's failure is a part of the learning experience. Through failure, we learn how to pick ourselves back up and keep going and persist in our goal. And if you quit, you're never going to win.
Right. That's what I was just going to say, John, is at least failing, you're trying. And I think people get in that mindset where you're afraid to try. I know I've been there before myself, and then you automatically fail because you never attain successful, goals that way because you're trying to avoid failing. And if you don't fail, then you'll never get there. So at least throw it out there, try it. And if it doesn't work, you learn and you pivot.
Yeah. Failure is part of this. And there's such a stigma against failure. People hate to fail. And people are afraid, I think, to even tell other people that they have failed. We talk about accountability, and that's really the key to accountability is telling somebody something that you want to do, whereas you will not, where you would rather die than tell them that you failed. You can use that to your advantage, and that can certainly help you, but you have to realize that we're human and we are going to fail. And in that failure is an opportunity to learn. And
think back, John, of when you were a kid, when we were kids, and we'd go to like a high school dance, and you'd sit on the wall and you'd think, should I ask that girl to dance? And then eventually we never would. And we'd never dance.
Right.
Because you didn't make that attempt to go up and at least try. And, when you got a little bit older in college and stuff and you started trying, then you surprisingly all of a sudden they'd say yes. And you're like, wow, why didn't I do this sooner? It's just, they used to say the more lines you cast, the more fish you catch. And it's the same thing. You got to try.
Now I'm singing, get your back up off the wall. Dance. Come on. Get your back up off the wall.
You're really dating us, man.
It's funny. My dad told me this story a long time ago. And he said he was out with his buddies. I think he was in the Air Force back then. And there was this guy, back then they'd have these big like barn dances and such. And
like Footloose.
There was this one guy who he wasn't good looking. He was overweight. He wasn't Mr. Popular or anything, but he always had the most fun at these dances. And my dad would say that he would find like the ugliest woman there at the dance. And as soon as he went there, he would find her and he would go and he would dance with her.
I think that guy is immortal because I worked with that guy when I was in the Air Force too. we had this guy named Trey, and he would always find the ugliest woman, be like, hey, and he'd always hook up, and it was like, man, what is with this guy?
But from that and going out there and having a good time and other women would come up to him. My dad would tell me other women would come up to him and want to dance with him. So, he basically opened the door for himself.
And he's exuding confidence, which is a big key in that game.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the goal is really to go out and have fun. So what does it matter, how you're doing that? If you're dancing with the prettiest girl or the ugliest one, who really cares? You're out there having fun. That's the goal, is to have a good time. Um, this article has a couple of different points that I think are important to this. And so, number one, it's the success is your personal responsibility. We talked about how success comes in many shapes and sizes, and it's really up to you to define that. By sitting, with your back up against the wall, you're and not dancing, uh, you're losing out on having a lot of fun. But that choice is yours, and you have no one else to blame but yourself if you don't take a chance. And so what if you ask someone to dance and they say no? You got to pick yourself up and ask someone else. And if you keep doing that, someone is eventually going to say yes, and you're going to have the time of your life.
John, I got to throw a plug in for our Facebook page. If you like the kind of articles that John's talking about, we work hard on curating really good articles. We try to post probably about 10 a day on our Facebook page. So just go to Facebook, A Swift Kick in the Ass, and you'll find our page. And we have a lot of good stuff there. Anything from finance to personal change to meditation to changing your life, man, and attaining goals. It's really, really good stuff.
Is that a kick in the ass or a swift kick in the ass?
A swift kick in the ass.
Okay. Number two from this list is demanding tasks are opportunities. And a lot of times, these tasks that we take on, these things that we take on, your success at them is not certain. You're taking a risk, and with that, you may fail. But if you look at it as an opportunity rather and a challenge, you're going to come out and you're going to learn something from that, rather than viewing that as a threat to yourself that's going to lead to impossible embarrassment. It says an achievement motivated individual might tell a failure avoiding individual, anything worthwhile is difficult, so stop acting so surprised. And isn't that true? Anything worthwhile they're not just going to hand it to you. It's going to take dedicated work, dedicated effort, thought, and you got to try. Because if you don't, you're never going to know. And the third is achievement striving is enjoyable. For me, I've learned how to make some of these tasks, especially where it's meeting like wants and needs that cost money. I've made that kind of like a game. Back during when we were heavily in debt and just starting to get some traction on our financial plan, dude, we needed things. And we had this bed that was like 15 years old. It was lumpier than, I don't know what, oatmeal? I don't know. It was lumpy. It was like a gravel road. And I think it screwed up my back.
I still have that bed from the years of the kids when they were little, jumping up and down and breaking all the springs. And then they have like the new beds, and I go lay in a mattress, and I'm like, man, I need to sleep in this room. This is like, I can fall asleep right away.
But, I remember we needed a mattress. It was killing our backs and making life hell. So what I did is I wrote a list down of things that I wanted, things that I thought would make me happy. Now, I recognize money doesn't buy you happiness. You can't buy happiness, but you can buy some things that might make your life seem a little bit better or more enjoyable. And for us, that getting rid of that lumpy mattress was key. So I remember writing down new mattress, and I put like $1,000 for it because we needed a king size bed. And what I did was I made a game out of it, and we saved up some money, and I think I got a new mattress for like $300 or $250 or something like that. What I thought it was going to cost, I was able to kind of negotiate and make a game out of it and get it for a lot cheaper. So I was meeting the need, but not for what I expected it to pay. And everything that I had on my list, I wrote down what I thought it would cost, and each and every time I beat that price.
I'm just so scared of buying a mattress, John, because ever since I watched a 2020 expose where what they were doing with some of these mattresses place, they were taking old mattresses and covering them with a new cover. So they'd get them and they'd slit them open, and they'd take like their black light and they'd be, look, it's filled with urine, semen, and fecal matter. And it's like, oh my gosh,
you pay extra for that?
Yeah.
Dude, mattresses are so, the mattress game has changed recently. I mean, it's changed over the years. I don't think you have to worry about that. And I think,
hey, I live in Miami, man. I do have to worry about that.
I mean,
every crooked scheme that can go on, it happens here.
Go online and order one. They'll ship it to you. and that's the strangest thing, because they vacuum pack the mattresses and they roll them up. So like this box comes in this box will come in the mail, and it's a king size mattress. You're like, how did they do that?
Really?
Like when you unfold it, and then stick your knife in, and make sure that the air comes in.
It's like a Jack in a Box.
It is. It's really cool. It's actually probably time for us to get another new mattress. But that's just a way of life is going to be difficult. It's going to be full of challenges, but you can make a game out of it so that it becomes something enjoyable to you. And even though our finances are clear now, and we're in a much different circumstance, I have to say, I enjoy that game. It's fun, and they don't just give you money. They don't just, nothing is free. So why just hand out your money for anything else?
And if you like the idea of gamification, like John's talking about, check out, I think we did 4 episodes on gamification.
Yeah.
So just check out our past episodes. You'll find them.
Yeah. One of my good friends, and his name's Hugh, he listens to our show, and I have to give him kudos because he's been my financial sponsor, and for a good number of years. And what that means is that if I have a big expense coming up, if I'm feeling weak, I call Hugh and I ask him what he thinks, and he gives me the nod, of approval or disapproval. But what I learned from Hugh over the years was, and Hugh is one of these guys who owns his own house. He's got money in the bank. He owns his cars. Everything he has is bought and paid for, and he's got money in the bank to boot. And he comes from his family were immigrants, came over from China, so they started out with nothing. And he's my financial sponsor. He's the guy that I look up to in regards to all finances. Even though he has money, he doesn't just throw it away. And every year he goes through this process of cutting and trimming the fat. And I've started doing this too. It's like everyone, has bills. It costs money to live. But that doesn't mean that you have to put up with that, huge cable bill. You can fight that. You can make a game out of that and try to get a better price and get what you want out of life by negotiation, and by threatening to, pull that service or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. They have a retention department, and if you call up and say, "Hey, I want to cancel my cable," they'll say, "Hold on," and they'll send you to the retention department first, and they start sweetening the deal to see what they can do to make you stay. They might give you some extra channels, maybe get a little cut if you have like a package with your DSL or your internet modem or whatever it is that they bundle, or a phone. That's another popular one that they do. So, yeah, it's worth a shot.
You know, it's so funny. Just recently, I got my cable bill, and I noticed it was different. It was more money. So I thought something's wrong. So I called, and I just had a question about the bill. And it turns out that I had a 2-year contract. But after the first year, the dollar amount changed, and I had agreed to that, and I was fine with that. I wasn't looking to lower my bill. But you know what they did? I didn't even ask for it. They're like, "Oh, well, you know what? We're gonna reduce your monthly cost, and we're gonna give you like free HBO and Showtime or something like that." I mean, I was like, I wasn't even asking for it. I just took the time to call and question what the bill amount was, and I got something out of it just for being curious. So, you can do that. And if you get yourself into the habit of doing things like that, you just be amazed at what comes your way.
Oh yeah. My mom just got stuck with like a $90 charge on her cell phone. And my mom, she's like grandfathered in Verizon, like for this really cheap, I think it's $20 a month, right, that she pays. She only has a certain amount of minutes. But she went to North Carolina on a vacation, and those old plans still have roaming. So she got roaming charges. She had no idea. She's never experienced that before. So she came to me and she was like, "I have this bill for $90. I don't understand." I said, "Call them up and tell them that you didn't know, and see what they can do for you." At least they cut it in half. They charged her $45. So still saved her $45 by making a call.
Yeah, and that again is accepting personal responsibility for your own success, and questioning things. Actually, that's a great segue for the next point, and that is that according to Psychology Today, achievement striving is valuable. I mean, we just mentioned how just by asking a few questions and making a little bit of effort, good things can come your way. And after that, it says skills can be improved. So the more that you do this, the more you ask questions, the more you try to better your life, the more you're going to fail. That's true. But the more you're going to learn how to succeed. And that is where true, I think, persistence
pays off.
Works. Yeah, it pays off. And I think that's about it.
I think that about wraps it up, John.
Yeah. Just again, we'll come back full circle to how we started this, and recognize that persistence is an art form. It's something we learn through practice and through doing, but persistence also means that you recognize when you should quit, and that in things that you can't control and things that that you can't win, it's okay to quit. But that's a personal choice that you make and a personal decision that you make. So there are limits to persistence. Why fight a battle that you'll never win? So with that, I think that we've got it. But until the next time, this is John Curren and my lifetime childhood friend, Tom Stewart.
And John, normally I get everyone to head over to swiftkickinass.com, which they're more than welcome to do, and join our free membership site. However, this time I'm going to ask them a favor. Go to comic book quizzes, right? This is gamification. I love comic books, so I've made this website, and it has all these different comic book quizzes on it. Take a quiz, share your results so other people get used to seeing our comic book quizzes out there. And all it is to promote our podcast. All is on there. There's no other ads but one little advertisement for changing your life with a swift kick in the ass. So if you go there, don't expect any kind of crazy pop-ups or affiliate links to pop up on you. It's just a quiz, and they're fun. And then at the end, they offer you a chance to share them on Facebook. So please do that. Thanks for listening. I'm Tom.
This is John. Till
Peace.
next time. Peace.